We know that every part of the Megillah Esther, the whole story, every single episode of the Megillah is helping the Yeshua, the salvation, come about. And we always have to look at each part of the story and say, why was this needed in order to get to the end game where the Jewish people are saved? And there's one part of the story that is, it's nice, it's exciting, it makes us clap, but we don't, if you think about it for a minute, we can't really understand what has to do with anything. And that is in the 6th parak, the pasuk says that Achashverosh remembers that he never gave a reward to Mordechai for saving his life. So he asks Haman, what should I do for such a person, he's anonymous in the name, what should I do for a person that I owe something to? I want to show how much I value him. And Haman says, you should take him through the streets on the royal horse, and you should say, Kacha yasel Aish asher melech chavetz bikaro. This is what you do for someone that the king really values. And Achashverosh says, okay, quickly, go get Mordechai, put him on the horse, and ride him through the street. And that's what happens. Haman pulls the horse, Mordechai is sitting on there, he's riding through, everyone's watching. Haman is saying, Kacha yasel Aish asher melech chavetz bikaro. This is what you get, this is the reward that someone gets that the king actually values. And immediately after that, he gets off the horse. Vayashav Mordechai el shara melech. Mordechai goes back. Rashi explains, what's he go back to? Fasting, back to his sackcloth. Nothing changed in the story. The decree was still there to wipe out the Jewish people. The fast was still going on. What was the point of that story? Guess what? It's exciting to us, but how did that help at all bring about the ultimate salvation? And the Alter from Kelm said the following idea. He said if you take a step back and you look at the story of Purim, there's an interesting point that's left out or forgotten about. And that is, who is the one that got Haman all upset and caused the wrath to try to obliterate the Jewish people? It was Mordechai. Everyone was bowing down to Haman, and Mordechai, lo yichra v'lo yishtachaveh, he wouldn't bow down. Not only wouldn't he bow down, but when he was sitting down and Haman would pass by, he wouldn't even stand up. Like, he totally made it as if this guy didn't exist. That just kept fueling Haman's anger and causing him to want to kill the Jewish people. So you take a moment, take a step back and say, well, what about all the other Jews? There were other Sanhedrin, there were other rabbinic figures, there were other very righteous people amongst the crowd. Why did they bow down? So the Gemara says it was actually permitted for them to bow down because this guy's not an avodah zarah, he's not an idol, he's a human being, he's Haman. So you're allowed to bow down. To the extent that Tosfos in Sanhedrin on Daf Samach Aleph asks, why did Mordechai not bow down? That's the question. The question isn't why didn't everyone else bow down. Everyone else bowed down because he's not an idol. Why didn't Mordechai bow down is the question. And Tosfos answers maybe Haman had an idol hanging from his neck or some other reasons, but it wasn't so clear that you weren't allowed to bow down. And in fact, the people ruled you were allowed to bow down. So can you imagine, you have all these other people, the entire Jewish people, they ruled that it was okay to bow down, and there's this one rabbi, a righteous person, but he's not doing it. And he's getting us into a lot of trouble. So Alter from Kelm points out, there was a little bit of a sichsuch, there was a disagreement and maybe even ill feelings. Nowadays, maybe that'd be like politics spoken about at the table, like, can you believe that guy? He's killing us, he's ruining it for all of us, and everyone's against him, and we're doing something that's halachically okay, and what's he doing? Why is he doing this? Why is he being super righteous? Why does he have to be different than everyone else? All these ill feelings that are occurring. And all of a sudden, they wake up one morning, and they hear all this noise outside. Right? Don't forget, they didn't have newspapers, and they didn't have social media to announce things. All of a sudden, they see a big ruckus outside. What's the ruckus? Haman is pulling a horse, the royal horse, with Mordechai sitting on there, and he's screaming, this is what how you value someone that the king really, really likes. And they're all looking outside. All the Jewish people, they're coming outside to the street, and they see him like, what is going on over here? How in the world did that happen? How is Mordechai riding the royal horse? This doesn't make sense. And all of a sudden, they say to themselves, you know what? We don't really know how in the world he got this. But we're starting to see that maybe Mordechai has it right. Maybe Mordechai does know something a little better than us. And all of a sudden, their ill feelings, the hidden conversations about Mordechai completely stopped. Because they valued Mordechai. And because of that, there was a tremendous amount of love. Tremendous amount of unity. We didn't have unity. There was a dispute. Mordechai versus everyone else. Now there's unity. And as we've mentioned already a few times over Shabbos and yesterday, that unity, that achdus, was needed in order for the ultimate salvation to occur, which happened later on that day. The decree being obliterated was because the Jewish people were able to hit that level of achdus, but they still didn't have it. But once they saw that Mordechai was doing something right, so then they rethought about all their issues that they had with Mordechai, the fact that he went on his own and was doing something else when he wasn't bowing down to Mordechai. I was thinking that that actually applies to many of us in our lives. Many of us. I always say it happens specifically in Aish at the weddings. You have a student that comes and goes on his own. The pressures from the outside, the influences are not saying, come to yeshiva, come to Israel, learn, get married. That's not the direction. And this guy goes on his own and he says, no, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I feel is right, and this is what I believe in, and yes, it's very, very hard, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And sometimes there's family members or friends that they're not agreeing, and they don't feel it, they don't understand it, they can't relate. And then all of a sudden at that wedding, the wedding is like riding on that horse. At the wedding, the father goes like this to me, he says, now I got it. Now I understand why he wanted to stay. Now I understand why he wanted to do what he wanted to do. This is unbelievable. You would never have had that back at home. This is a constant message that I see every time. That's exactly what happened over here. We have to realize, and Mordechai realized this, that we have to be careful in all of our actions that we're always doing what we believe is right. Sometimes there's pressure, sometimes there's outside influences that isn't going in our direction. In fact, most of the world is not going in any of our directions. Right? We're tiny, tiny, tiny nothing. And for us to be able to stay strong, for us to be able to stay focused, we have to look at what happened with Mordechai. This is something that happens in every generation. There's always a certain tide, and the Jewish people, for some reason, are always going against that tide. We're trying to bring everyone else on the tide, but we're going against it, and we have to push, and we have to stay focused, and we have to try to grow and try to achieve our dreams. And today, a day of Tainus Esther, the day of Yom Kilal Koli, the Gemara says. There's a day of everyone gathering together. It's a day of recognizing that, at least amongst ourselves, we have to realize and appreciate other people. Sometimes people are doing things a little bit faster than us or differently than us. We have to realize that they're also growing and they're also going in their direction. They also have a push. We have to be accepting of that. We have to try very hard to have the Yom Kilal Koli, and we have to be very careful within our own lives that even if it is difficult and even if there are pressures, of course we always have to be nice to everyone, and we're not talking about that. But as long as we're always focused and pushing forward, Be'ez Hashem will always have that opportunity at some point that we'll be able to ride on that horse. We'll be able to have that chasana. We'll be able to have that opportunity when Hashem says, you see, he pushed forward. He did it for the right reasons. I'm behind him. I give him my blessing and I give him my success. And Be'ez Hashem, if we take time through today and through Purim to focus on what we believe in and where we want to go and how we want to get there and daven for it, Hashem, Be'ez Hashem, will give us that opportunity to have that spotlight for everyone to appreciate what we're doing and to be behind us and supportive and allow us to hit the highest levels of success that we all deserve.